utilization and needs, as well as practice and policy impacts. Her past work experience with provincial government health and social services ministries and with community organizations provides her with a broad-based perspective on health and social issues. She is also actively involved in local, national, and international health and patient organizations. The title of her address this morning is "A Case for Building on Interdisciplinary Health Research Academy and Opportunities for Interdisciplinary and Cross-Sector Partnerships in Health Research." Professor Kovacs Burns.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. The case that I'm going to present this morning, it reminds me of a little of what Dr. Hahn was talking about. This was really, it felt like action research or research in action. It was not a research project, but there were times when I felt as if I was a participant in it as opposed to trying to organize something for the University of Alberta. So I'm going to share with you a bit of experience that we had in trying to set up something that we felt was long overdue, looking at interdisciplinary research. And I'm going to talk about some of those same kinds of change elements. You know, we all go through the process of sometimes fighting to stay in the same position without change. Change is sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And so we had a lot of resistance. We had a lot of denial. A lot of anger when we first tried to initiate this particular initiative. So this is what I felt like in the beginning, you know, the light bulb went on because there were so many of us who were convinced that the right direction for health research in particular was to be totally interdisciplinary, interprofessional, cross-sector. It should involve engineers just as much as it should involve healthcare practitioners. But as things progressed in terms of this particular initiative with the Interdisciplinary Health Research Academy, which I call IRA for short, I felt like this. It felt as if I was sort of falling through this big void, trying to catch myself, and the people that I worked with were in the same position. When you work with a university that has a number, well, we have over 6,000 health faculty alone in 8 faculties, and then we have 19 faculties in total. It's like herding squirrels. It's not herding cats anymore. These cats come to feed once in a while, but it felt like herding squirrels. But we realized that once we started to talk about stuff, you know, that whole thing about awareness and communication and being open about the possibilities and inviting in some of the community cross-sector people that we work with on a daily basis, there was more collaboration, and I think I started to feel better towards the end of the very first year of taking this initiative on. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about stepping off that edge and doing some exploration, giving IRA some life and what that meant, and then watching it grow and moving it now into the future. And IRA really is only 2 years old. I talk as if it's been here for, you know, a decade. But it really, you know, pieces of it have been there for 5 to 10 years, but it's really only 2 years old. So when I went out to actually do, and my team was working on, let's look at some existing models out there. Let's see what is actually out there. Who's doing this kind of academy work, and what can we borrow from those people? Who can we visit and watch to see in action? So we did a comprehensive search, and I was really disappointed to see that there were very few published articles in terms of interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary work related to universities, you know, the educational institutions that train health professionals or other professionals for that matter, but there was very little published. We went into the gray literature, and we found more pieces there. So we selected and screened about 115 different health research plans, mostly from universities, but we found there were health institutions that actually had better research plans than some of the universities. We reviewed and summarized 64, and we found 6 different models, including the community-university partnerships that we felt were going to be coming close to what we were looking for. So we started with understanding. You know, when you go into discussions around these terms, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, it's amazing how different people interpret those three terms. So we had to actually start from scratch to understand where it was we were coming from, because they are very different. Interdisciplinary actually means having different disciplines coming together, integrating, working together jointly to come up with a solution or research project. Multidisciplinary means many of the same kinds of the same disciplines. So if it's medicine, they're all in medicine. They're nursing, they're all in nursing, but many of them working together in teams. Transdisciplinary is slightly different again. Each discipline does some of their own thing, and they bring that expertise into to sort of collaborate. So we learned a lot about this process and the fact that maybe we were trying to use the wrong terminology, because initially we started off with multidisciplinary, and we ended up having to take a 360-degree shift to now look at interdisciplinary, because that's really where we want it to be. It's not this, so it's not that we're creating an academy for, it's not that we're creating physics for psychologists or physiologists. It really was looking at this as an integrated model where all the disciplines would come together to create the courses, the research, the practice, team-based practice, team-based settings. So we ended up with this type of philosophy that we were actually learning as we were going. We are not students of some subject matter, but students of problems. And problems may cut right across the borders of any subject matter or any discipline. And we felt that this really was what we were working on at the moment. So if you look at giving our life, I mean, we started back in 2010 with the idea. And it's like anything else. If you want to have buy-in, you have to start working with the different groups to have buy-in. And we decided to go to our associate deans of research. So we have 19 we invited to the table. We called them an advisory committee at the time. We wanted to find out just what they felt researchers were thinking about interdisciplinary research. And we started to become more aware, that awareness piece and that communication piece. And we decided that, yes, it was interdisciplinary work we wanted to work on. It wasn't multidisciplinary, and it wasn't cross-disciplinary. So, in fact, we established at least one thing that we could agree on at that point in time, very early on. And then we decided, well, let's go reach out to all those people doing the research in our faculties across the University of Alberta and see what they were doing. Were they doing interdisciplinary research, or what were they doing? I mean, we throw these terms around all the time. So we put out a call for letters of intent to all the faculties. 18 were involved here. One is an off-campus faculty. And we actually had 22 teams submit letters of intent to us with expression of interest for follow-up. And it was surprising that there were only 7 of those 22 that we could really call interdisciplinary research by definition. The others really were not, and so we had a lot of work to do. We still work with some of these teams, and some have gone on to be much more successful as a result of some of the changes. But there was a starting point for us, looking at our own internal business around research and how we were addressing it. Then we decided to go out to our stakeholders, and that is all the government, community organizations, funders, industry, health institutions, our Alberta Health Services, all those groups, to find out how, in fact, they were involved with some of the research we were doing. So we had a huge stakeholder retreat. Now, we invited over 100 people, but 75 showed up, and it was very informative because although they really wanted to be involved in research and practice and education with us, they really didn't know where to start or who to start with. So really by March 2011, we had identified that we had some issues and gaps and needed to build a strategic plan. But we had an identity. Between March and June, we decided that we had to call ourselves something and do something, and that's really where IRA was formed. So it became a community of not only university research scholars and educators too, for that matter, but also the external stakeholders who in fact have the real research questions for us. And we were all committed actually to doing interdisciplinary health research and making sure it was applicable to the real world. It doesn't replace or compete with single discipline faculty or stakeholder research interests. We wanted to hang on to those because that is an individual effort. But we did have a creative vision then too, that in fact we were going to be looking at this in terms of resolving priority health issues in a better way, as opposed to sort of putting research questions out there, exploring them, and then maybe not even doing the knowledge translation that needed to be done to get it back out into practice. We created a mandate so that we knew it would be cross-faculty, it would be cross-disciplinary, it would be multi-partner, that it would be interdisciplinary, those were key words for us, and that we would really be trying to look at research questions that impacted individuals, communities, healthcare providers, health systems, and governments in a broad way. We developed 2 strategic priorities, only 2, because we felt that we had to work with something. And we started off with the word incubate, so looking at the discovery pieces around research questions and were they really relevant and to whom. So incubating, developing, and advancing priority health research initiatives. And around that, of course, we realized we had to build capacity because interdisciplinary research is not something that comes natural to every single discipline or every single faculty. Not in our institution, for sure. And I have spoken to others across Canada, and I realize we're not unique in that respect, that we have to build capacity for conducting really true, strong interdisciplinary health research. So we ended up actually looking at how we were going to steer this big ship around the academy, and who's going to do that, what governance was going to be in place, and what leadership, who's going to lead us. We ended up looking at 3 different groups to actually help us with that process. So the Associate Deans of Research were very important for us. There's the Associate Deans of Education, or a separate group. But there is also a steering committee that was created as a result of that retreat with the stakeholders. They wanted to be part of the academy. And so the steering committee became half academic and half community. Mind you, the steering committee is a little bit large right now. We're sitting at about 25 people, which is too big. But we get a lot of work done, and there's a lot of interest. And a lot of it is steered by the community, and it's the academics, I think, who are becoming aware of the fact that the research questions that are really solid around health really do come from the community. Not that we didn't know that before, but to actually be experiencing that was actually beneficial. That global stakeholder sounding board has been the most beneficial for me as a director for this academy, because if I were to put something out there, I can use our website now, which is going to be a portal, but I can throw out a question to the global sounding board, which is now 154 members, but they can tell me some things about what's going on out there, and if in fact we're headed in the right direction. Researchers can use the same portal, and the community can use the same portal, so they can throw questions back at us. That sounding board has been extremely beneficial in terms of how IRA now is going to be evolving in the next years ahead. And we do definitely have an organizational structure, and we report obviously to a provost and to the president of the university through all of our activities, but the community is really part of that, and we have had our president actually attend our meetings. We also were fortunate having a brand new building built at the same time, and things sort of fell together. All that colored glass that you see there is that prime real estate that I'm responsible for the academy, the research academy. All of that is research space. It actually is 2 football fields long, and so lots of good space. It's very light oriented. No more basement kind of labs and research areas. And so we have moved our health sciences faculties into this new building. And of course, we have other faculties involved and community groups. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. But things seem to fall into place. And this building was almost a facilitator of something that happened, I think, in terms of the connectivity, which I would never have believed to have happened because, You know, for universities, we're often thought of as the ivory tower to the community, and government, we think of government as being an ivory tower, but when you have a building that's publicly built, publicly funded, it is owned by the public, and the public like to come in. So it's a very different kind of orientation. You can see by this is a very open model. We want to encourage engagement of all people, including students, along with the community and academics. We can accommodate any size of research teams, from 5 all the way up to 100 if we need to. Some of them are fairly large because you're involving community stakeholders, and they do divide off into working groups. So it's a very different kind of model for a research discovery model. We call it a discovery model. For IRUN, for the work that I do, I actually have 800 of the 2,500 square meters of space that we can actually work with in terms of massaging some of the community member teams who may not have academics that they're working with when they first come into us with a research question. So we do have some space management involved there and some infrastructure commitment that we make to those teams. We have guidelines and principles, and we also have calls out to all the faculties to make sure that we can match. So we've gathered inventories of research interests from not only all the faculties, but also the community groups that we're involved with, and we can actually help to match through a broker how those teams might evolve and look a little bit differently in terms of cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, could be multidisciplinary as well, but we want to make sure that we do have that interdisciplinary nature and cross-sector. Lots of infrastructure commitment now. We've managed to get some grants. In this last year, we ended up getting $1.3 million from TELUS to help us with building some of the capacity, which has been marvelous. Another $200,000, and these might be small amounts of money at this point in time, but there is a start because there is some community groups that are now beginning to see that there's value and having them as part of this process and building the kind of research that's going to be applicable to the community. So we do offer team facilitation, different kinds of capacity building, starting even from Research 101, lots of resources and services, central brokering. There's a research hub, portal, networks, and lots of shared amenities. The research that has gone on within the academy itself started off with the academics, of course, but now the community has said to us, look, we want to get involved too. So why don't we put out a call to the community and see what kind of statements of research interest we're going to have there. We didn't call them letters of intent, a little technical and a little researchy. So we call them research areas, statements of research areas of interest. And we ended up getting 27 calls from the community, and that's just Edmonton area. Ended up with 10 applications that we really felt were solid, that we could actually support with some funding and pulling teams together and building capacity. Students expressed interest, of course, word gets out, you know, and so we have had the health science students involved from the beginning, but now the other campus students also want to be involved and engaged in research. We're putting out studentships for research, and we're trying to increase that because it's an opportunity to actually help build the team with the students that are part of our process, education and research and practice settings. We only have a small staff complement at this point, so you can imagine why we were sort of felt like the falling umbrella most of the time. But 3 of us actually work at pulling these things together. So that's why I say it's like herding squirrels. You know, when you've got 17 to 19 faculties you're pulling together, some of them off campus, and then all the community groups as well. So we have now got 18 research teams in our Discovery Mall area, research area. It is collaborative. We help to monitor, we have to provide the services that they need, and we've just begun that process. So I haven't had a chance to evaluate it to even tell you if it's truly working yet, but we have a sense that it is. It's like this model, and this is borrowed, of course, but you know, you start off with a dependency, and the dependency is really within your own discipline and in your own work. You feel comfortable there. you become a little more independent, and you stretch out and get a feel for it. And I think this is where we were with that awareness part. And we reached a threshold where we really wondered if we were doing research that was really knowledge translatable or transferable, and questioned a lot of the stuff that's been on the shelf for a long time. I think that the interdisciplinary work that we're starting to do is reaching that point of interdependency, where in fact you realize that some of the solutions come because you have other disciplines working together to try and resolve a question that really otherwise is so narrow focused that it may not be necessarily applicable. And in healthcare, that's very important these days. Healthcare has a tendency now to move towards team-based practice, team-based care and management even. So in progress, this is all the stuff that we have on our agenda to work on. It's really building our website and our portals to make IRA much more flexible so we can reach out to a lot of communities. And it's not just Edmonton, where the University of Alberta is situated. It is across Alberta, and now we're getting actually national. And teams, of course, are national, and teams are international as well. So we do have to expand our horizons as much as we can. We want to get those teams into our discovery mall so that we can offer them the best kind of service and support so they can be successful at writing those research grants, at doing the research, translating it, and getting it into the practice setting where they need to be, where the research needs to be. We have a research broker now that we've just hired, and that particular broker, it's an interesting framework for a position, because that particular person is like a broker. I mean, they would be examining the composition of teams and the work of teams. They would be matching with other groups that they know on campus and community groups, with government. We have government people who are part of our research teams, and making sure that it's really a solid kind of composition, and the teams have what they need to be able to do their work. Then funding for capacity building is now in place, or is starting to be for seed funding anyway, and we will be doing developmental and ongoing evaluation. We started that process already. So conclusions, well, to me, IRA is a case study. It's a case in question. It is research in action as far as I'm concerned. I wish I had actually documented some of these things a little more accurately so that I could get a publication out there, because when I realized there were very few publications on this type of model, it's disappointing. And you know, we should be doing more of that. The community should be doing more of that. It's participatory action as far as I'm concerned, because when you have the buy-in of all of your partners, including not just the university community of academics and administrators, educators, it's also the community, because the community is part of that university. Students are very much a part of it. And to bring us all together, I think, is that participatory action that I'd like to see from the various partners. We have to continually challenge the naysayers and the skeptics, because you can start out somewhere, and you start somewhere. We had lots of denial and a lot of skepticism in the beginning, but I think we have to ask ourselves, so who should be asking the health research questions anyway? Does it really belong always to the academic who feels that their question is the only question out there, when in fact we know that the real questions lie within the practice settings, or the people who access the health care, the people themselves who experience the health care. So there is really nothing conventional or usual about anything around IRA in particular. I mean, there's no key, no guidebook. I mean, we are out there actually developing this and experimenting and exploring. But it actually has been a very rewarding kind of opportunity. And my motto is never give up on a dream, because it really was a dream about 5 years ago. And I think today I can stand up and say that at least we have achieved a good start. It's a good start for an academy that I think is going to be making a difference to our community, particularly in healthcare, but we hope that there'll be other settings as well. And so, you know, then a miracle happens. And I think that that's really where we're at. It feels that we've been very opportunistic, and we still have a long ways to go, but we feel that we've accomplished a lot, and, you know, there's a lot of good things happening. So this is this is what I have. So I thank you very much and look forward to your questions later.